Look at a tomato flower in your garden for 5 seconds. It looks open. It looks simple. It looks ready. But unless the right bee grabs that flower and vibrates it, the tomato you are waiting for may never form properly. This is how bees pollinate tomatoes, through buzz pollination, a hidden vibration most gardeners never notice. And the strangest part is that the bee on your tomatoes is not there for honey. She is there to unlock the flower. A tomato blossom can look finished from the outside. Yellow petals, a small pointed center, sunlight on the leaves. But inside that center, the pollen is trapped in tight, tube-like anthers. It does not spill out easily. It has to be shaken loose. So when a bee lands and clamps herself against the flower, she is not just visiting. She is turning her body into a tool your garden may need. Number 1. Your tomato flower is not as open as it looks. Most people think pollination is simple. A bee lands, pollen sticks, the bee flies away, and fruit begins. That version is true for some flowers, but tomato flowers are built differently. Their pollen is held inside a cone of anthers, and the flower does not always release it to a casual visitor. The petals may look open to you, but the important part is locked inside. That is why the bee matters. Not because she loves tomatoes, not because she is helping your garden on purpose, because she has the right behavior for the shape of the flower. Tomato pollination is not only about contact, it is about vibration. Wind can help shake the plant. Some gardeners tap the stems by hand. In greenhouses, growers may use electric tools or bumblebees. But in an ordinary garden, one of the most powerful pollination tools may be a bee holding a yellow flower for a few seconds. You may have seen this before and missed it. A bee lands on the tomato flower. She does not wander gently across the petals. She grips the center. Her body tightens. The sound changes. For a moment, the flower trembles. That tiny tremble may be the difference between a blossom that fades and a fruit that begins. Sign number 2. The bee is using buzz pollination. Buzz pollination, also called sonication, is when a bee vibrates a flower to shake pollen loose. It is one of the most important bee behaviors in vegetable gardens, especially for tomato flowers, pepper flowers, eggplants, blueberries, and certain wildflowers. The bee does something almost unbelievable. She lands on the flower, grabs the anther cone, and vibrates the powerful flight muscles inside her thorax. Her wings are not flying in the normal way. The vibration is focused into the flower. The anthers shake. Pollen shoots out through tiny openings and dusts her body. From the path, it may look like a bee sitting still. Up close, she is using sound and muscle to open a locked food source. This is why how bees pollinate tomatoes is not the same as how bees visit many other flowers. The tomato flower is not offering an easy drink of nectar. It is offering pollen, but only to an insect capable of making the right vibration. The flower has a lock. The bee has the key. Behavior number 3. Not every bee in your garden can do it. This is where the story turns, because the most famous bee is not always the best bee for tomato pollination. Honeybees are extraordinary. They make honey, communicate flower locations, build comb, and support many crops. But honeybees generally do not perform true buzz pollination. They may visit tomato flowers sometimes, but they are not the classic specialists for releasing tomato pollen. Bumblebees are different. Many bumblebees are powerful buzz pollinators. Their bodies are large, their vibrations are strong, and their flower handling is direct and physical. Certain solitary bees can buzz pollinate too. That means the insect doing the most important work on your tomato flowers may not be the honeybee everyone recognizes. It may be the heavier, fuzzier bumblebee you hear before you fully notice her. That sound can matter to your harvest. Here is the question I want to ask you, because this is where many gardeners realize they have already seen the behavior. Have you ever heard a bee on a tomato flower, pepper flower, eggplant flower, or blueberry blossom make a louder, deeper, stranger buzz than usual. Tell me in the comments what plant it was on. I read every comment, and this matters because that sound may have been buzz pollination happening in your garden. Number 4. The bee is not collecting honey. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings in garden pollination. The bee on your tomato flower is not there because tomato flowers are filled with honey. Honey is something honeybees make later from nectar. Tomato flowers are mostly useful for pollen, and pollen is not dessert. It is protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, and growth. A bee colony cannot raise its young on nectar alone. A bumblebee nest cannot produce new workers without pollen. Larvae need it. Developing bees need it. The future of the nest depends on it. So when a bee buzzes a tomato flower, she is not thinking about your salad. She is gathering food for young bees. The tomato plant is using that need. It holds pollen in a structure that requires a specific action. The bee wants the pollen. The flower needs the pollen moved. Neither side is being kind. Neither side is being sentimental. But together, for a few seconds, their needs line up. The bee gets food, the flower gets a chance at fruit, and your garden receives the result. Sign number 5. The flower may show proof after the visit. After a bumblebee or another buzz-pollinating bee handles a tomato flower, the anther cone can sometimes show small brown marks. Gardeners often call these bite marks or handling marks. They are not necessarily a sign of damage. They can be evidence that a bee gripped the flower tightly enough to vibrate it. That means the flower may keep a record of what happened. You thought the bee landed and left, but the tomato blossom may still be holding the proof. This is the kind of detail most people never notice because they look for fruit later, not for the small signs that fruit might begin. They wait for a green tomato and forget that the real decision happened earlier, when the flower was still small and yellow. That is the hidden timing of pollination. The action is brief. The consequence takes weeks to grow. Number 6. Your garden may already be part of a bee's route. The bee on your tomatoes may not be wandering. She may be working a route through your yard. A bumblebee can learn which flowers give good rewards. She can return to useful patches, ignore empty ones, and move through a familiar sequence with surprising efficiency. To you, it looks like random movement. To the bee, it may be a map. This is bee behavior at garden scale. Your tomato plants, herbs, flowers, and weeds are not separate decorations. They are signals, rewards, dead ends, and memory points. A bee may visit the tomato blossoms for pollen, then move to a nearby flower for nectar, then return to the nest with the results. If the patch pays, she may come back again. That means your garden is not background. It can become part of a bee's working world. The bee does not know you planted the tomatoes. She does not know you are waiting for fruit. But she may know the place. She may know the smell, color, shape, and reward of the flowers. She may know that this corner of your yard is worth the energy, and that is already more personal than most people realize. And this is why the first hour of the morning matters so much. A tomato flower may be open before you have finished your coffee. A bumblebee may already be moving through the vegetable bed while the leaves are still cool and the light is still low. By the time you step outside, the most important visit of the day may have already happened. You see the plant standing quietly. The bee has already come and gone. That is the same pattern we keep finding in the backyard. The visible moment is usually not the beginning. It is the trace left behind after a hidden action has already changed the result. A flower trembles. Pollen moves. A root becomes worth remembering. The garden keeps its ordinary appearance, but the system underneath has shifted. That is how a few seconds of bee vibration can turn into weeks of growth you only recognize later. Sign number 7. Your pollinator garden is not only about color. A pollinator garden is not just a collection of pretty blooms. It is a landscape of flower shapes, bloom times, pollen types, nectar rewards, and bee abilities. Some flowers are easy for many insects. Some are built for specialists. Some offer nectar. Some offer pollen. Some need a bee strong enough to shake them. Tomato flowers belong to that second world. They ask for behavior. Not every visitor can answer. This is why bumblebee pollination matters so much in gardens and greenhouses. It is also why native bees and wild bees can be more important than people expect. Honeybees get most of the attention because they are visible, managed, and famous. But some of the most important garden bees are the ones people barely name. A fuzzy bumblebee on a tomato flower, a solitary bee moving through a vegetable patch, a small wild bee working the blossoms before you step outside. The garden is not just asking, are there bees? It is asking, are the right bees here? Behavior number 8. The tomato you pick later may begin with a sound you barely heard. This is the part that should stay with you. Weeks from now, you may walk into your garden and pick a tomato from the vine. You may notice the color, the weight, the warmth from the sun. You may think about watering, soil, pruning, weather, and time. All of those things matter. But somewhere earlier in the story, there may have been a 3-second vibration. A bee held a yellow flower. The flower shook. Pollen moved, and the fruit began. By the time you notice the tomato, the bee may be gone. She may be visiting another garden. She may have returned to her nest. She may not even be alive anymore, because the lives of many worker bees are short. But the result of that vibration can remain, growing quietly on the plant long after the sound has disappeared. That is what makes pollination strange. The visible reward comes late. The important moment is easy to miss. Number 9. The bee is not helping you, but your garden may depend on her. This is where we have to be honest. The bee is not visiting your tomato flower because she wants to give you fruit. She is not working for you. She is not thinking about your kitchen, your harvest, or the tomato you hope to pick. She is feeding herself and her young. But nature often works through overlapping needs. The bee needs pollen. The flower needs vibration. The garden needs successful pollination. You need the flower to become fruit. For a few seconds, all of those separate needs meet on one yellow blossom. That is why the scene matters, not because it is cute, because it is precise. A tomato flower can look ready and still need the right physical trigger. A bee can look small and still carry the tool the flower requires. A sound can seem ordinary and still be the mechanism behind the fruit. Once you understand that, the garden changes. A buzzing bee is not background noise. It may be the sound of a flower opening its future. Behavior number 10. The next time you see it, you will know what to watch for. The next time you see a bee on your tomato flowers, do not only watch where she lands, watch how she holds the flower. Watch whether she grips the center. Watch whether her body curls around the yellow cone. Watch whether the buzz changes from flying to vibrating. Watch whether she moves from blossom to blossom with the same focused pattern. You may be watching buzz pollination. You may be watching bumblebee pollination. You may be watching how bees pollinate tomatoes in the exact moment it happens. And you may be watching the beginning of fruit before the fruit exists. That is the hidden life under the ordinary one. A tomato plant in your garden is not just leaves and flowers waiting for weather. It is part of a living exchange between plant shape, bee behavior, pollen, vibration, and time. The flower looks simple because you are seeing it from the outside. The bee experiences it as a problem to solve, and the solution is in her muscles. So the next time your tomato plant blooms, look again. The flower may look open, it may look simple, it may look ready, but somewhere near your house, the right bee may be the difference between a blossom that falls and a tomato you will one day hold in your hand. If this changed how you see tomato flowers, buzz pollination, bumblebee pollination, or the garden bees working near your house, subscribe to the channel. There is much more happening in your garden than the surface ever admits.